If your interview protocols cannot encourage participants to share their real experiences during qualitative research or during interviews, then you are likely not going to achieve anything meaningful from the process. Hello, let us talk about qualitative interview guide and how to ask questions that get results. Have you ever conducted an interview where the participants gave one-word answers and you walked away with almost no useful data? Think about this. The problem isn't the participants, it's the way the questions were asked. So in this video, I want you to understand the best way to ask qualitative interview questions and get quality responses that you need for your results. Let us look at why interview questions matter. Interviews are one of the most common methods of qualitative data collection. But here is the thing. The quality of your data depends on the quality of your question. If you ask the right questions, you are going to get the right answers. Let us look deep. Good questions invite participants to share stories, emotions, and experiences. Bad questions, on the other hand, only scratch the surface. Let me use an example to explain these 2 points above. If you ask, "Do you like school?" the answer will probably just be, "Yes, I like school," or "No, I don't like school." But if you ask, "Can you describe your experience in school and what influences how you feel about it?" Now you are opening the door for a more deeper and more insightful response. The qualitative questions are different from quantitative questions. For quantitative questions, participants are not allowed to give in-depth information. They are not allowed to tell stories or narratives. For qualitative interview questions, participants are expected, in fact, they are encouraged to tell stories, give an elaborate narrative, explanation of certain information. Okay? So this is the power of asking the right questions. You need to know how to make your respondents or your participants to say more, probe them deeper, to give you more information. So let us look at the types of interview questions you may want to ask. First, introduction or warm-up questions. These are simple questions to build rapport. For example, "Can you tell me a little about yourself or your background?" So this opens the participants up, and this helps the respondents to feel comfortable, be at ease with you. Okay. The second one is the exploratory question. These dive into the topic of your research. For example, "Can you walk me through a typical day in your workplace?" Right? And then the third one is probing question. These encourage participants to go deeper. For example, "Can you give me an example of that?" Or, "How did that situation affect you?" This is applied when the participants may have given you explanations about how they walked through their typical day at their workplace. So you can ask, "Oh, really? How did that situation really affect you?" So this is like probing. When they talk, you ask another probing question to make them tell you more and more and more, because in qualitative research, the most important thing is to get more information from respondents, because the more information you are able to get from respondents, the better you are able to provide quality information, quality new idea, the more you are able to generate new concepts, new phenomena that have not been researched before. The fourth one is clarifying question. These make sure you truly understand the meaning of what was said. For example, when you mentioned feeling stressed, what exactly do you mean by that? So you just want to be sure that the respondent truly understand or understood, clarifies any information provided. Finally, closing question. These wrap up the conversation. For example, is there anything else you'd like to share about your experience? So this enables the participant to tell you things that you did not ask that they would have loved to say to you. If you don't provide this opportunity, this closing question for them, sometimes you may also miss out important information from participants. You allow them to tell you other things that may be helpful, which you did not include in your questionnaire. So together, these types of questions create a smooth flow for your interview. So let us review common mistakes to avoid when conducting your qualitative interviews. The first one is asking yes or no question. This shut down conversation instead of opening it up. So don't make them, do you like attending church on Sunday? Say, oh yeah, sure, I do. Oh no, I don't like that. And that ends the conversation. Number two, asking leading questions. For example, don't you think online learning is much better? That pushes the participant toward a certain answer rather than allowing them to share their opinion, their responses, their true views on the particular issue. You just limit them, okay? The third mistake is double questions. Throughout my videos on designing questionnaires for your research, I have explained clearly that you do not need to ask double questions. For example, how do you feel about your teachers and classmates? In one question, that's too much. So which one am I going to give you? Am I going to answer you about the teachers, or am I going to answer you about the classroom? The best thing to do is to divide the question into two. That's two different questions, and the participants may only answer one. So you need to ask specifically about the teachers, and then again ask about the classmates. The fourth mistake is jumping into sensitive topics too quickly. Always warm up first before you ask deeply personal questions. Start with a warm, welcoming question, and then go deeper, and then deeper, and then deeper. And finally, avoid interrupting your participants too much. Remember that the interview is about the participant's story, not yours. So be patient and let them talk. Let them share their stories. Let them tell you their narrative. Remember that sometimes when you cut people off, they might feel annoyed. They might not feel comfortable anymore to talk. So important information, deep insights you might get from them will be cut off by interrupting them. Some of them might feel that you don't want them to really talk. So then why did you bring me here? So allow them to tell you their stories. When they are done telling you the stories, during data analysis, you sieve out the ones that are relevant and leave off the other ones that are not relevant. So let us review how to frame powerful interview questions. I will encourage you to start your questions with how. Frame the how questions. Use can you describe to frame your questions. That will enable the participants to tell you more stories, or give you more narratives, or make more elaborations. Use why questions, and then you can also use what. You use the what question when it becomes necessary. Ordinarily, the what question will make your responses to be more descriptive. If you really want to explore certain information, certain phenomenon, I would encourage you to stick to the how can you describe and why. Then when it becomes necessary, when you want to probe the participants, you can now use why. For example, what do you mean by going to school late? What do you mean by being obsessed about quantitative research? Good. So you can clarify. Instead of asking, did you enjoy the training? Try asking, how would you describe your experience with the training? Encourage storytelling with phrases like, tell me about a time when you attended the last training session. And always keep your language simple and clear. For example, instead of asking, what is your perception of institutional performance? You could ask, how would you describe your school's performance in helping students succeed? The easier the question is to understand, the better the response you will get. These are some techniques to get deeper answers when you probe your respondents. You can use techniques like, can you give me an example? So this will enable them to give some instances. Probing questions like, how did that make you feel? What happened next? Probing. When they have finished telling you about their experiences, okay, so what happened next? Another powerful tool you may consider is silence. If you pause for a few seconds after someone answers, they often continue and give you more detail if you don't interrupt them. Think about this. You can also use small prompts like, that's interesting, tell me more about that. When you use small prompts like this, that will give your respondents the feeling that you are enjoying what they are telling you. So they will be happy to tell you more. Okay? So probing shows you are listening, and it encourages the participants to dig deeper into their experiences. So think about this. So let us look at how you can prepare and practice your interview guide. Before you actually conduct your interviews, prepare an interview guide. Most times in qualitative research, we call it interview protocol. So you can consider writing down the questions in the order you wish to ask them, okay? But you need to also remember that it's a guide, not a script. So you need to be flexible. Sometimes you can ask from any part depending on how the conversation flows. So you should be flexible. You shouldn't be rigid about it, okay? Feel free, even if you have 10 questions in the interview protocol. That does not mean that it must be number 1 to 10 on, serially. It can be 1, 5, 6, 8, 2, 3, depending on how the conversation flows. All right. Then pilot test your guide with a friend or a few colleagues to make sure the questions make sense. This will prevent you from asking questions that may sound rude to the participants. And always align your questions with your research objectives. If your study is about learning habits, don't waste time asking questions about unrelated topics. Keep it focused, keep it simple, and ensure you don't violate the respondent's rights. Think about your interview guide like a map, so it keeps you on track, but still, it allows you to explore side roads when necessary. So what do I mean by side roads? Like, you can ask the first question, the second question, and then you can then probe further. When you probe the participants, sometimes those probing questions may not appear in your interview protocols, but the results that will come from those probing questions will really be meaningful to you. So let me do a recap of what we've done so far. Great interviews don't just happen. They depend on asking clear, open-ended, and probing questions that encourage participants to share their real experiences. If your interview protocols cannot encourage participants to share their real experiences during qualitative research or during interviews, then you are likely not going to achieve anything meaningful from the process. Avoid leading yes and no questions. Keep your language simple. Use probes to go deeper, and always align your questions with your research goals. I hope you are able to learn something new today. Thank you so much for watching.